Penguin Audio presents The Cat Who Had 60 Whiskers, written by Lilian Jackson Braun, read by George Guidall. Prologue. Overheard at an alfresco party in Moose County, 400 miles north of everywhere. Woman in blue Shetland sweater. I have never heard of such a thing, and I've been a veterinarian for 20 years. Man with large mustache. What can I say? I counted them myself. Woman. You might have miscounted. Man. Would you like to count them yourself? If I'm right, you can report the evidence to a scientific journal. If I'm wrong, I'll take you to dinner at the Mackintosh Inn. Woman. Fair enough. We'll do it the next time you bring him in for a dental prophylaxis. Chapter 1. The man with the large mustache, a well-groomed pepper and salt, was Jim Qwilleran, columnist for the Moose County Something, and transplant from down below, as locals called the metropolitan areas to the south. They themselves, for the most part, were descended from the early settlers, and they had inherited the pioneer fortitude, sense of humor, and appreciation of individuality. They enjoyed the quill pen column that ran twice weekly, accepted the fact that he lived alone in a converted apple barn with 2 cats, and admired his magnificent mustache. James Mackintosh Qwilleran had entertained several ambitions in his youth down below. First, to play second base with the Chicago Cubs, then to act on the Broadway stage, later to write for the New York Times. He had certainly never wanted to be the richest individual in northeast central United States. How it happened was a tale stranger than fiction. Aunt Fanny Klingenschein probably knew what she was doing when she made him her sole heir. Qwilleran established a philanthropic organization, the Klingenschein Foundation, which went to work improving the quality of life in Moose County. Medical, scholastic, cultural, and infrastructural improvements were made possible by the fund, as it was known to one and all. To everyone's surprise, other old-moneyed families were inspired to put their fortunes to work for the public good. A music center, 2 museums, and a senior recreation facility were in the works. Everything's going too smoothly, Qwilleran thought, with the pessimism of a seasoned newsman. "What's your fix on the situation, Arch?" he asked his old friend from Chicago. Arch Riker was now editor-in-chief of the Something. He shook his head morosely. "When there's so much money floating around, somebody's going to get greedy." Visitors from far and wide, in formal attire, had paid $500 a ticket for a preview of the mansion called the Old Manse. It was a late evening in August. Qwilleran and the cats had been enjoying a cozy evening in the barn. He had read to them from the Wall Street Journal, and they all had a little ice cream. The barn was an octagonal structure of fieldstone and weathered shingles more than a century old. Indoors, all the old wood surfaces and overhead rafters had been bleached to a honey color, and odd-shaped windows had been cut in the walls. Where once there had been lofts for storing apples, now there was a ramp winding around the interior with balconies at 3 levels. Later in the evening, the Siamese deserted the reading area and chased each other up and down the ramp, then dropped like flying squirrels onto the sofa on the main floor. The living areas were open plan, surrounding a huge fireplace cube, its stacks rising to the roof 40 feet overhead. It was almost 11 p.m., and Koko and Yum Yum were being unduly attentive. It was time for their bedtime snack. Proceeding in slow motion to tantalize the anxious cats, he rattled the canisters of kibibbles and dusted off their 2 plates with exaggerated care. They watched hungrily. Koko appeared to be breathing heavily. Suddenly, he switched his attention to the wall phone that hung between the kitchen window and the back door. He stared at it for a minute, twitching his ears nervously. Qwilleran got the message. By some catly intuition, Koko knew the phone was going to ring. After a few seconds, it rang. How?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?